So friends, just to add point here. So especially when we are dealing with client or customer personal details or sensitive details, there will be very, very stringent norms that have to be followed. We basically have to have the documentation abiding with all the security norms followed by the organization and by the individuals who are working on the project. In general, we basically call it as general data protection norms, GDPR rules, that is general data protection rules. And these are basically governed by the European bodies, and everybody who's working with data have to abide with these norms. It is not only confined to finance related projects, but any project which you feel that it is breaching the individual's privacy, then we will have to follow the or abide with the security norms. This is just to summarize the point. Now, Mr. Bernie, I would also want you to throw some light on how many versions of the data that you actually worked on, and were you able to actually deal with identifying these differences in the versioning?
Yeah, Sharath, absolutely. So version control was extremely important for us when we worked on the project. Because when we started off working on the project, we have only resorted to secondary data, the data which customer has given to us. Of course, we have asked for relevant variables and customer has told that I have data for these variables and customer has given us the data. Initial models that we built, the machine learning models, were based on the secondary data. And it didn't give us the desired results. So again, we went back to the drawing board. We tried to figure out that, getting the data from social media will make a lot of sense. So we extracted the data from social media and appended that to the existing data. So then we had the second version of the data. And, we kept the customer continuously informed that, dear customer, this is the new data that we have got. Now we are trying to build a new model so that if client feels that any of these variables that we are capturing is against the law of the land, then they would let us know, right? For example, gender should not be captured or should not be used in your model building because you'll be gender biased. You should not be capturing the location details as well in your model that you're building because then you'll be biased towards a certain community living in a certain location. So we had to be wary of the law of land. So we have kept the client apprised of that. So that social media data, when we tag to the data which client has given, it became version 2. Then as part of version 3 of data was there because when we have collected initially, we collected data for only last 2 years. Then we thought, okay, that data wasn't sufficient, maybe because we weren't hitting the desired accuracy there. So we went back to the customer and told customer and requested customer for 1 more year data. So 1 more year data was given to us by the customer, and that became version 3 of the data. And we had to maintain the versioning because we wanted to compare on adding the data, did it result in better accuracy or not? So we were continuously maintaining the version history of the documents.
Thank you, Mr. Barani. I also want you to talk about the errors that you probably would have encountered with respect to the data bias or data fairness for your model building.
Yeah, absolutely. When we have done a research, we figured out that variables such as gender, variables such as race, the race that they belong to, whether they were national of that country or whether they were expatriates, foreigners, and do they belong to a specific community? Do they belong to a specific race? These kind of things, we have selectively ignored them, removed them. Upfront, we told to the customer that, these are the variables which we feel, according to us, would bring in a lot of bias when the models are built. So do you still feel that according to the law of the land, you can use these variables in your model building, or do you feel that we are on the right track? Customer told that good, that you didn't include these variables because these would have led us to some legal implications. And this was a US client. So given that it was US client, these things are very, carefully dealt with. And again, there was another project that we have done in the Indian context, but location was very important to figure out whether a person will default on the loan or not. So depending on the location and the law of the land, we have to adjust and look into what variables we need to capture and what variables we should not. So with respect to bias and ethics, these were the variables which we have upfront notified to the customer that these have to be ignored from the model building.
Thank you so much, Bernie, for that answer.